Welcome to a Tuesday edition of Beyond the Arc. I'm John Gonzalez alongside, per usual, our NBA insider, Bill Ryder. And look at this, two guys, repeat offenders, draft experts, rejoining the program. He's a 24/7 sports director of scouting. Adam Finkelstein is here, and our lead NBA draft analyst, Kyle Boone, is here. We're going four wide, guys. Big show. This is our second ever BTA mock draft. In the first one, Adam went first. In this one, we're going to go to Kyle first. The Atlanta Hawks are on the clock. It's the first time they're picking first in almost 50 years. They had only a 3% chance to get that first pick. Doesn't matter. They pulled it off. Big off season for them, Kyle. They got to figure out what's going on with DeJounte Murray, whether or not he's staying or going, Trae Young, Clint Capella, a whole bunch of other things. So which way are they going with the first overall pick in our second mock draft?
Yeah, we're going to take Zachary Risachet at number 1 for the Atlanta Hawks. I think the floor is pretty high for him. He's 6'9". He's really developed as a shooter. I think he's a multi-positional defender. He's a relentless defender, someone who I think brings a lot of energy to the table. I'm not totally thrilled about the pick, to be honest. If I'm at number 1 for Atlanta, I'm probably trying to trade down and gather some assets. But I think if I'm staying here at number 1, if I'm Landry Fields, I think I'm going to take Risachet, who has the highest floor. Obviously, look at the odds here. Currently the betting favorite to go number 1. That is how I expect it to go on draft night on Wednesday.
All right, highest odds going with chalk here brings us to Adam with pick number 2. The Washington Wizards did not cover themselves in glory last year, 15-67. Only the Pistons were worse. Which way are they going with pick number 2? Another Frenchman?
Yeah, for sure. They're going to take Alex Sarr, who I think has a case to be the best player in this draft. In fact, I think he might have been a candidate for Atlanta if he was willing to work out for them. But he wanted to end up in Washington. I think Washington is thrilled with this because if you look at their roster, they only have a select few long-term building blocks, and the ones that they have are on the wing. Sarr gives them a big man and a defensive anchor to build around. In the modern NBA, court coverage is hugely important. We are talking about a mobile 7-footer who can fly around the court, potentially guard ball screens in multiple ways and protect the rim as well. The offense is a work in progress, as too is his frame. The extent to which he's able to develop his scoring will ultimately determine his upside, but you know what you're going to get on the defensive end of the floor. So this is good value for Washington with the second overall pick, and also a really good fit with what they have in place there.
Adam is absolutely channeling the Wizards thinking. I visited with someone in that organization this morning, and they think it's an opportunity for the reasons Adam just said. The Hawks, look, who knows what the Hawks would have done? They are certainly frustrated, Landry Fields, that Sarr did not show up for a workout that was scheduled. And I know that the Wizards, in talking to this source this morning, they really like him. They agree with Adam. They think in a really complicated draft where there's not 100% opinion across the board in the NBA or even in organizations, I think the prevailing wisdom in Washington is this is probably the best player in this draft. And so I think Adam is spot on, and there's a lot of excitement in DC that if he falls to 2, which is obviously expected, this is the expected pick, and they feel like maybe they're going to have an opportunity to take with the second pick somebody they would have taken with the first pick had they been there.
Sarr wanting to be in Washington, very Kyle Kuzma of him. They do have a Nando's though, so he'll be able to check that out. All right, this is where the draft, I think we all believe, is actually going to begin at pick 3, the Houston Rockets. Now things could potentially start happening. 41-41, chase those Golden State Warriors down towards the end of the season. Didn't pull off being in the play-in, but obviously, Kyle, they're in win-now mode. Alperen Şengün was hurt. He'll be back. Jalen Green had a good second half of the season. You know, they've got some veterans. They might have hit on something here with Amen Thompson. Which way are they going with the third pick?
I think that they will consider Reed Shepherd here, and I think the betting odds reflect as much as currently the favorite to go number 3. But I'm going to take Stephon Castle from UConn. I think he's one of the most NBA-ready defenders in this draft. He's a guy who consistently drew the toughest defensive assignments for a UConn team that went 37-3. And, oh, by the way, won the national championship. And he showed some flashes on offense that I think is very promising. Can be kind of a two-way playmaker on both offense and defense. It seems like Houston has a lot of young pieces that can play offense. I think Stephon Castle can fit with just about any roster in the NBA. Reminds me a little bit of a Jrue Holiday when he was younger. And so I like the skill set. I think he can blend in just about anywhere, especially with the Rockets, given the situation where they're at right now.
It'll be interesting to see if the Rockets keep that pick. There's rumors about them maybe moving back, trying to package it to get a veteran. We'll get into that a little bit later, but that leaves San Antonio for you, Adam. 22-60 last year. They had Victor Wembanyama and Devin Vassell, and then your mileage may vary on a roster that is, let's call it incomplete to be kind. They need a point guard. They need shooting. Who are they taking at number 4?
We're going to take Reed Sheppard. I think, to Kyle's previous point, there's a very good chance that Sheppard is off the board here if Houston keeps that pick at number 3. But if you're San Antonio, you're most intrigued with are Risa Shea and Sheppard, because you need to surround Victor Wembanyama with shooting. And Reed Sheppard shot 52% from the three-point line last year at Kentucky. Now, that wasn't the only thing that he did that made him a statistics darling. His on-off, his plus-minus numbers were terrific. His defensive metrics were terrific. He also got 4 assists and 4 rebounds per game. So there's a lot of things to like about him. And then he goes to the NBA Combine, and he registers the highest vertical leap there, which was just another surprise to add to the resume from this year. So Sheppard goes to San Antonio. He's another guy that brings just elite character, ultra culture guy, and he's going to bring that floor spacing that the Spurs really need to start to create around Wemby in order to maximize this guy who looks like he's ready to be a star sooner rather than later.
Yeah, love the pick for all the reasons Adam just said. Let me just say, keep an eye on San Antonio maybe trying to move up for Risa Shea, and just because Wemby obviously has a relationship there. And in a draft, and I know we're going to talk about this, where not everybody, but most people want to move back. San Antonio might be one of the few teams that really want to move up. Now, are 4-8 enough to do that in this particular draft? What are they willing to spend? What does Atlanta want to do? Really want to do is a huge question mark. I don't know the answer. I don't think many people out there really know what Atlanta's doing. Landry Fields, the GM, has really kept his cards close to the vest. Love the pick, but if they do decide they want to be aggressive and move up to that top spot, I wouldn't be surprised if the Spurs make that move.
Yeah, what does Atlanta want to do? Bill, I don't even know if Atlanta knows what Atlanta wants to do. And you mentioned is 4-8 enough.
They haven't known the last 3-4 years. Yeah.
They really need to figure that out eventually. We'll find out if 4-8 is enough to move up. That brings us to the Detroit Pistons at number 5 here, Kyle. Awful season for them, 14-68, worst record in the NBA. Under new management, Trajan Langdon takes over basketball operations. They're still looking for a head coach. Your mileage may vary on Cade Cunningham. Then they've got Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren, who I think are some nice pieces, but they quite clearly need more here for a coach that is still to be determined. Who do you like at number 5?
Yeah, I'm going to put a vote of confidence in Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey. I'm going to take someone who I think could fit with them, and that is Cody Williams from Colorado. Shot 41.5% from three-point range as a true freshman last season at Colorado. Obviously, the younger brother of Jalen Williams, who's an all-star for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Cody Williams battled through injury throughout most of last year, and you can go and there's a feature on CBSSports.com now from Matt Norlander talking about like some of the injuries that he played through. He was advised like, hey, if you're a potential lottery pick, you may consider sitting out and just playing the rest of the season from the sideline. And he played through it. He battled through it, still finished in 95th percentile as a catch and shoot weapon. Very good size, very good skill set as a driver, as an attacker, as a shooter. Can fit into a number of different rosters. I think in Detroit would make a lot of sense with Cade Cunningham, who's a do-it-all guard, Jaden Ivey, who can really get downhill. Add another piece to this young core that I think the Pistons can build around as a kind of foundational young core in that backcourt.
You're very optimistic there. I like your optimism. You said that he'd fit in well with any roster. That's a roster that needs a lot of help. So we'll see if that works out for them. It brings us to 6. The Charlotte Hornets also need a ton of help. LaMelo Ball was out for a big chunk of last season. Mark Williams, who they were high on in the middle, Adam, also out for a big chunk of last season. They did seem like they hit on something with Brandon Miller. They're going to kick the tires on him and LaMelo Ball. We'll see if those two work out together. But they could use just about everything. So who do you like at 6?
This one's going to sound unconventional, so hear me out. But I'm going to go Donovan Clingan. Okay. And I do believe Mark Williams is the center of the future there in Charlotte. But Clingan is a prospect who's going to be in the mix overall at number 1. Quite frankly, I think that's who Quinn Snyder wants at number 1. Whether or not he gets his way or not remains to be seen. But if he slips all the way to 6, and Castle's not on the board, who I think is someone who fits very well with that roster, what Clingan does is he gives you a big trade asset. And there are multiple teams who are trying to trade up to get him. Memphis, Chicago, Oklahoma City. Reason being is you have got a defensive anchor who's just absolutely huge in the middle and has got underrated offensive skills. So you're hearing comparisons to Rudy Gobert. Certainly, that's what Quinn Snyder equates him to, given their time together in Utah. You're also hearing some Marc Gasol comparisons because this is a 7-foot plus guy who can dribble, pass, and potentially shoot. I mean, I'm talking about making slip passes off the dribble at his size. So there's a high acumen for the game. I don't think he and Mark Williams have a future together, but if Charlotte's to the point where they're wondering about Williams' durability, maybe this pick makes more sense than people would think. But to me, again, I'm going to emphasize this is what I would do and not necessarily what I expect Charlotte will do unless they're going to move this pick.
Yeah, it would be a wonky fit, but you sold me on it because look, Mark Williams, he could be the center of the future for the Charlotte Hornets, but you do have some questions about his availability. And also they're are definitely in best player available mode. So if he's the best player, why not? All right, going to pick number 7, Kyle, Portland Trailblazers. They're one of just maybe 2 or 3 teams that this coming season will not be looking at potentially making the playoffs in the Western Conference. That's how loaded the Western Conference is. So they got some room to grow here. Some pieces that I guess are okay. Anthony Simons, then I'm not a big DeAndre Ayton guy, doesn't like to go to work when it's snowing or icy out. They could also use a ton of help. Who do you like for the Blazers at 7?
Yeah, first I'm licking my wounds here because Adam sniped me. I really was hoping that Donovan Clingan would fall to me at number 7. I like the idea of pairing Scoot Henderson with Donovan Clingan, a lob threat, but
I will take modest. That's why I took him.
Hey, let's talk offline to see if we can work something out. But I will take Modest Buzelis here at number 7. This is a guy who, entering the 2023-24 season was seriously considered a number 1 pick candidate and struggled last season with G League Ignite, shot below 30% from 3. But you look at his numbers before G League Ignite, his shooting was really one of his strengths. He's 6'9", 6'10", combo forward, can put the ball on the floor. I like his versatility. I think in Portland, next to Scoot Henderson, you had someone who has some size, can play the 3, can play the 4, pretty good rebounder, very aggressive, someone who has kind of an alpha mentality. I think that would fit well with Portland and kind of what they're building there with the Trailblazers.
Just like that, 7 picks and our second ever BTA mock draft are in the books. We're going to take a quick timeout, and then the San Antonio Spurs will be back on the clock with the 8th pick coming up on Beyond the Arc. You are watching CBS Sports Network. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. It's our second ever mock draft. We roll on with the San Antonio Spurs, who have their second pick now of the lottery at number 8. Like we said, Wemby could use some help here. Adam, who do you got that you think you could pair with him?
We're going to go Dalton Knecht from Tennessee, who I think may be the most NBA-ready perimeter scorer in this draft. He's definitely a shooter, so when you combine him with Reed Sheppard, I think we've really addressed the floor spacing issue that was one of the biggest priorities for San Antonio this year. I don't like that tandem defensively, Reed Sheppard and Dalton Knecht, but I just think there's more potential for this to happen. Conventional wisdom is they won't take 2 guards, but if they think Sheppard is a point guard and they really buy into Knecht's ability to come off screens and have some gravity to open the floor up for Wemby, I really do think this could make some sense. And remember, when you got 2 lackluster defenders, you might as well have a generational rim protector behind them.
Certainly wouldn't hurt. Brings us to number 9, the Memphis Grizzlies. We were talking earlier about the Houston Rockets being an interesting component to this lottery. Same with the Memphis Grizzlies. Really weird year for them last season, Kyle. Ton of injuries. Everybody was hurt. John Morant was out, Desmond Bane, Brandon Clark, Marcus Smart. Rolls on. Steven Adams was hurt, and then they moved him as well. They could definitely use a big here. Are you going big for them?
I'm going to go medium here for the Grizzlies. I'm going to take Devin Carter, Big East Player of the Year. Devin Carter, actually, his father is an assistant coach on this Grizzlies staff. I think would make a lot of sense. Very competitive, kind of an older player. The Grizzlies front office has shown like it doesn't care about making sure that they get kind of the younger guys. They want guys who can win now, and the Grizzlies are ready to win right now. Had a breakout year this past season for Providence, can shoot the 3, can attack, really good on the ball as a defender. I think could be a fun sidekick next to John Morant on that Memphis team that, again, I think they're ready to compete right now in the West. And I think that would signal taking Devin Carter. They're ready to compete. They're ready to get back in the hunt.
Yeah, no, they have to win right now. It's a great call. I would not be surprised if they're one of the few teams that actually look to move up in the draft, depending who's there and what's available and what the the appetite is of some other teams to move down for the reasons Kyle just said. Now, I think that they're going to target a big. I think that's the likely outcome. But they also, whoever they get, as you said, Kyle, it has to be in combination with someone who can play immediately. This is a loaded West. We talk all the time about it, John. Memphis, I think rightfully so, see themselves as contenders right now when everybody is healthy. And this draft, this pick's going to be important for somebody that can get on the floor and give them some quality minutes immediately.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Bill. They're one of 12 teams that have designs on the postseason in the Western Conference next season. Number 10, though, picking 10th in this draft, the Utah Jazz, they are not among them, Adam. This is a team that it could be time to unplug pieces like Lauri Markkanen and Colin Sexton. Jordan Clarkson is still there. We'll see. Dealer Danny, you never know what's going to happen with him, but which way do you think well, you're picking on behalf of Danny Ainge, so what are you picking for him?
Yeah, I'm going to take my guy here, but it's also someone who I think would resonate with Danny Ainge, and that's Ron Holland. Ron Holland was the top player in high school basketball a year ago. He is a highly competitive and very athletic, 6'7", maybe even bigger wing. We know he's going to bring it on the defensive end of the floor. The question is the shooting, but I'll tell you what, guys, he reminds me a little bit of Jaylen Brown, who Danny Ainge drafted some 6 years ago. I could totally see Ainge going with this one, and if he did, I would stand up and clap. I think this guy is being underrated here as we approach draft night tomorrow.
Look, I think Adam is crushing this draft, and not just because he was a guest on my radio show this morning. I promise that is not the reason. Isn't this the typical Danny Ainge pick? This guy, Holland was the best player in his class a year ago. A year ago, he would have been projected to be one of the top picks, and so he went to that now defunct, may it rest in peace, G League Ignite team where, it's hard maybe to have the same sort of opportunities that we thought when that thing began. That's why it no longer exists. So this just feels like if this guy is there when Danny Ainge is able to make the selection, Danny Ainge will take him. And then it'll turn out that we'll look back and say, what was everybody thinking? Of course, this was the guy. That's classic Ainge. I love the pick, Adam. And thank you for being on the radio show.
My pleasure.
Nice plug. Yeah, we go from Danny Ainge. Got to get the plug in for the radio show. We go from one of the smartest general managers and best run front offices, right, in the Utah Jazz, Bill, to number 11, the Chicago Bulls, who Bill and I were talking about this the other day when Alex Caruso got traded for Josh Giddey. I have no idea what the Bulls are doing. I have not known what the Bulls are doing for quite some time now. They traded for Josh Giddey. They traded were with the Oklahoma City Thunder, a team that has a zillion draft picks, and managed to get exactly 0 draft picks here, Kyle. So if you told me that they were taking somebody who wasn't even a basketball player, played rugby or something, it wouldn't surprise me. They're befuddling. What are they doing here?
Yeah, I think it's in play. They just sell this pick for a couple $100, maybe some cash considerations. Who knows what they're going to do? I think I'm going to take Tidjane Salaün here. I did not expect that he would fall to number 11. I think he's a top 10 prospect in this class. Played for Cholet, had a career year for Cholet. Good size, good score. I like his athleticism a lot. I think he's in play for the Spurs, either at that 4 or number 8 pick, assuming San Antonio stays put. Someone who I think is still a little bit of a development prospect. But again, I think if you're Chicago, you're not pushing the chips in for next year. You're looking down the road. Salaün in a couple of years, I think, could be one of the better prospects to come out of this class. If I can get him outside the top 10, I'd be thrilled to do that.
The Bulls should outsource this. I have no idea how they're going to pair Josh Giddey with Kobe White, with potentially Zach LaVine when he comes back. None of it makes any sense to me. But now we get to the Oklahoma City Thunder, the aforementioned Thunder, who are on the opposite side, Adam. They've got Sam Presti, who's done an excellent job with this group. They were the youngest number 1 seed in NBA history. Their core is locked up and young with SGA and multiple Jalen Williams and Chet and Dort and Caruso and on, and a zillion picks that we mentioned, one of which is at number 12 in this draft. Who do you like for them?
I like Nikola Topic, and this is someone that I've mocked to them ever since the injury, quite frankly, because he might be out all of next season, and that means he's going to take both a franchise and an executive who's got the luxury to wait on him to hit. He's not going to provide an immediate return on the investment. But I even like this pick more for OKC since they moved Josh Giddey, because Topic is a big guard who excels at getting into the paint and that has a terrific feel for the game as a passer. So that's very much like Giddey, although not quite as big. Now, he's not a great shooter, so there would have been big questions about how he fit on the court with Giddey. Now that Giddey's gone, Alex Caruso is in there. I see that long-term fit being much more clear for Topic being able to come in and being a nice fit on an OKC team that is all about getting paint touches.
A good fit would be a good thing for the Thunder. If they can play him in the playoffs, that would be a good thing for the Thunder, unlike Giddey. All right, we go to number 13, the Sacramento Kings. Just re-signed Malik Monk. That's a boon for them, Kyle. No pun intended. Who do you like there at 13?
Love it. Yeah, I'm going to take Jared McCain at number 13 for the Sacramento Kings. And I think this is the best shooter in the draft. Falling to number 13, I think it's a good value. Shot 41.4% from three-point range this past season as a true freshman at Duke. And he's a dazzling prospect, someone who is a really good movement shooter, can line up the ball and really shoot it at a high level. Quick release, someone who I think can play multiple guard spots. A little bit smaller. I think there's some questions in terms of his defensive capabilities and durability on that end. But, I think you already have a ton in place. If you're Sacramento, you feel good about where you're at. Jared McCain's someone who I think you plug and play as kind of an off the bench microwave scorer who has some room to grow as well.
Yeah, who needs defense? They did more offense for Sacramento, please, and thank you. And look at this. The last pick in the lottery, we've already arrived at it. Another one for the Portland Trail Blazers, Adam. As we mentioned, they could use a ton, not a lot in the cupboard beyond Anthony Simons and potentially Scoot Henderson. Jury's still out on him. Who do you like at 14 to round out the lottery?
I like Yves Missy. I think Portland might like Zach Edey more, but I think it's clear for all the points we previously mentioned about DeAndre Ayton's aversion to driving in snow and making it to, things he's contractually obligated to be at. And then, quite frankly, his motor, even when he does show up, he's just not maximizing the potential we saw earlier. So they got to figure out who their center of the future is. Missy gives them an athletic big man who runs the floor, blocks shots. He's a lob threat. He's very similar to this year's Derek Lively in this draft, and he's young, so he's got a high upside. Yves Missy would be the guy for me at 14.
All right, the lottery is wrapped up. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to get into the second half of the draft. Some interesting teams coming up, including those Los Angeles Lakers. What will they do at 17? We will find out. Coming up on Beyond the Arc right here on CBS Sports Network. Welcome back to Beyond the Arc. You're watching us on CBS Sports Network. We're also a podcast. You can find us wherever you get your favorite shows. Please download, subscribe, and leave us a review. Our second mock draft with our two draft experts and our NBA insider, Bill Reiter, rolls on with pick number 15, Kyle. The Miami Heat, kind of a middle of the road season for them. They end up making the play-in, but no Jimmy Butler. Jimmy's out there making videos about how they would have knocked off the Knicks and the Celtics. They do have Heat culture going for them, and Pat Riley and a smart front office. And they could use some extra pieces here. Who do you like?
I'm going to take someone who's fallen a little bit farther than I expected. Rob Dillingham at number 15 from Kentucky, one and done, shot 44% from three-point range last season, was in the 98th percentile as a catch and shoot weapon. He's a great offensive player. I think there's no doubt about it. I think there's some questions about his defense. Did not rate favorably last season as a true freshman. I don't know if he necessarily has the tools to be a great defender, but sticking with the theme of some of my picks here, I don't really care so much about the defense. I believe in the offense. I think that he is so good on offense that he will be able to stick on the floor as someone who is a really dynamic playmaker and, hopefully stick with the Heat culture here. I believe that eventually they'll be able to develop him as someone who can be kind of their primary creator on the ball.
Kyle likes what he likes. He likes offense. Going to pick number 16. Adam, this is a tough one. The Philadelphia 76ers are picking at 16. And at present, they have exactly two players who will be back next season in Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. Daryl Morey had set this up where they're going to have $65 million in cap space. It was always going to be a high wire act. He's got to create an entire team out of thin air this offseason. They could obviously use a warm body. Which warm body do you like for them at 16?
Well, not to mention the host of the show has a Sixers jerseys behind him. So the pressure is on here. I'm going to go with someone who I think has fallen a little bit, but is, I think, a fit, and that's Kyle Filipowski. The reason why I like Flip is because he's a 7-footer, close enough, who can dribble, pass, and shoot, albeit not to the same extent people have assumed, at least when he first got to Duke. So for me, there's the potential to both play alongside Wemby and to create along Embiid and create some floor spacing, but also to back him up. So you get some positional versatility there. I think the hip surgery he had last offseason helped him on the defensive end too. So I like this fit more than most.
They've been looking for a backup big to Joel Embiid for the entire time that Joel Embiid has been in the NBA. So I like that. And also, you could never disappoint me, Adam, when it comes to the Philadelphia 76ers, because they do enough disappointing for me. I'm in a constant state of disappointment, so don't worry about that. All right, pick number 17, the Los Angeles Lakers. This one is very interesting. Just hired JJ Redick. As everybody knows, LeBron's got the decision coming up where he has to decide whether or not to opt into his contract if he's staying put. Moving on, they're always in win now mode, Kyle. You got to come up with something for them. They need players and they need to figure out how to keep LeBron in Los Angeles.
Yeah, and for a long time, we've believed that the Lakers are interested in someone who played college basketball at USC last season. We're going to do that. They're going to take Isaiah Collier, the former top 5 prospect in the 2023 class. This is a guy who I think is falling farther than expected, but his offense, I think, is really dynamic. He's someone who has really good passing vision. The shooting needs to improve. I think there's no question about that, but battled a freshman year last season at USC where the team struggled. He struggled with injuries. I think a healthy version, Isaiah Collier, would make a lot of sense for this Lakers team. Need to add an influx of youth, of dynamism on offense, of talent who I think they can build around long term. And I think Collier, just in terms of his talent, his playmaking, could fit on this team right now as a contender and also help build this team into the future post LeBron potentially.
And let me add it. If the expectation, really the Lakers have no choice, is that D'Lo is going to be there for the long term, has player option, and presumably he's going to want to get paid. But let's say that D'Lo goes somewhere else. This is a guy that can slide in there. I was going to make a comment, Kyle, about is this what JJ Redick wants? And maybe he wants somebody that fits the math model more in 3-point shooting. But who are we kidding? JJ Redick's not making those decisions. So I'm assuming you got this approved by LeBron, assuming LeBron gave the approval since he's running the organization. Love the pick. If not, I wish you the best of luck with that conversation when he bumps into you in the hallway.
Yeah, the D'Angelo Russell thing is interesting because if he does go somewhere else, Bill, I had mentioned many times on this program that a good landing spot for him could be the team that's picking next at number 18, the Orlando Magic. They've got a ton of cap space that could overpay for him. And Lord knows they need shooting. The defense is really good, Adam. You know, they've got I kind of think of them as almost like an Eastern Conference Minnesota Timberwolves starter kit where they've got Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner, and then Jalen Suggs and Jonathan Isaac are just otherworldly defenders. But absent, say, adding a D'Angelo Russell, who just, will fire away at will, they need offense. Is that the way you're going for them at 18?
Yeah, it is. I'm going to take Bub Carrington. To me, this is an Orlando team that has taken a lot of swings on young guards in recent years, including last year where they drafted Anthony Black, a big guard, and then drafted Howard, a potential shooter who went straight to the G League, albeit after being selected in the lottery. Bub Carrington is a late-blooming big guard who's grown 8 inches since he was in high school and exceeded everyone's expectations this year at Pittsburgh. His best basketball is clearly still in front of him. He's improving by leaps and bounds. He is a terrific pull-up shooter, and I think you're going to see him continue to extend his game in the years to come. So this is going to be a patience play, but I think you could have a long-term answer here in the guard spot to complement Jalen Suggs with Bub Carrington.
All right, brings us to number 19, the Toronto Raptors. They hit a little bit of a reset button last year, sent out a bunch of players, including OG and Pascal. They bring in RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley. Scotty Barnes is their centerpiece now, Kyle. Could go in any number of different directions for the Raptors. Which direction do you want to go for Toronto?
Yeah, I'm going to take kind of a surprise here. I'm going to go Kaishan George, a little bit off the board, but someone who's very toolsy, has a lot of length. Toronto seems to value guys who have a lot of length, can shoot the basketball, and have athleticism. And Kaishan George checks all those boxes. Actually grew up playing the point guard position. Very smart guy with a high IQ. Ended up growing kind of late in his career and shot 40% as a freshman last season. Playing at Miami, someone who I think has kind of the tools to play on the wing, like his size, like his skill set, and I like his IQ, the way he plays. I think would make a lot of sense. You've already got, Scotty Barnes there. I think adding weapons around Scotty Barnes makes a lot of sense. I like his size and I think would make a great fit there in Toronto.
Adding weapons is something that the team picking 20th here, Adam, also needs to do. The Cleveland Cavaliers could have been a good season for them. then they ended up tanking into the 4 seed so they could play the Magic. They've got to figure out what they're going to do with Donovan Mitchell, whether he's going to stick around and sign an extension. Darius Garland might want out. Does Evan Mobley work with Jared Allen anymore? Are you going to unplug one of the bigs? A lot of questions in Cleveland, including who they're going to take at number 20.
Yeah, I mean those are the questions that could really drive this pick, right? Do you take a guard and think you're going to split up Garland and Mitchell? Do you take a big and think you're going to split up those Twin Towers? So naturally, I'm just going to take a wing and avoid all that. It's Tristan da Silva, who's one of the better plug and play options from Colorado. I think there's a very good chance he goes 16 or 17 with Philadelphia and the Lakers both being very interested in him, but he's someone you can slide in right now. And if Cleveland retains Donovan Mitchell, it's going to be to try and win as soon as possible. Da Silva's someone who can give you rotation minutes, space the floor, make shots, and defend his position. So of all the rookies left on the board, I think he is one of the best suited to play rotation backup minutes in a playoff setting.
Yeah, when in doubt, take a wing. Most teams can use a wing. Although the next team here at 21, the New Orleans Pelicans, might be an exception to that rule. There's been a lot, and Bill could talk about this as well, but there's been a lot of talk about the offseason facing the New Orleans Pelicans about how Brandon Ingram might be on the move. They've got to extend Trey Murphy. They've got Herb Jones there. A lot of pieces that don't quite fit together here, Kyle. Who do you like for New Orleans at 21?
Yeah, I think I'm going to consider Kel'el Ware here. Zach Edey is on the board. I think would be an interesting, if not totally unusual fit next to Zion Williamson in New Orleans. But I'm going to take Jacoby Walter from Baylor, someone who has a track record as a really good shooter. Struggled a little bit at Baylor, but kind of took on a role that I don't think he was totally prepared for. I think Jacoby Walter, just the size, the shooting ability, you're adding, all of those weapons to a New Orleans team that has Zion Williamson, and I think you're going to surround him with shooting. Walter, I think, is someone who can kind of check those boxes, like his size, like his shooting, plug and play type prospect too. I think we'll have a bounce back here as he jumps to the NBA with more spacing.
Going to be a fascinating offseason for the Pelicans, man. They're going to, everybody expects them to move some pieces around the board. They absolutely have to do that because they weren't quite good enough last year when they get swept by Oklahoma City. Brings us to number 22, the Phoenix Suns. They aren't going to have an interesting offseason, Adam, because they're super capped out. They're into the second apron. Thank you, Bill. I appreciate that. As Bill and I have discussed on this program, this is their team. There's only so many levers that they can pull. One of those levers would be either picking at 22 or potentially moving back and turning this first round pick into multiple picks. But for the sake of this exercise here, Adam, we're going to have them select at 22. Which way are they going?
They would take Zach Edey in this scenario. I don't love the fit because, he's someone who's got to have the scheme kind of rely around him, but this is just farther than he's going to drop. I think there's a chance he's off the board at 9. I think there's growing lottery momentum for Zach Edey, and if he were on the board here, he'd just be too hard to pass up. The most dominant player in college basketball the last 2 years. He's an absolute giant of a human being, and the thing we don't talk enough about is his rate of improvement. He has improved by leaps and bounds every year for as long as we've been tracking this guy, and there's no reason to expect that to stop once he reaches the NBA. So again, I don't think he'll be on the board at 22, but if he is, I don't see how anyone passes on him.
Adam, you referenced this to a degree. They already have a big, slow center, so why not add another one? There's a divergence of views, as you guys know, about what Edey maybe is going to be in the NBA. I tend to be inclined to believe the folks I talk to who don't think that he's going to live up to obviously hype and expectations from his college career. I also, as you could note from my laughter when John was introducing this pick, do not think that the Phoenix Suns know what they're doing. I know a lot of people in that organization, and we have gone, as we've talked in the podcast, from them telling me that they have a real plan when the Ishbia era began to, I think, coming to the realization, maybe we don't know what we're doing. And so if you take the logic that I don't think Edey's the right pick and you combine it with the fact that I don't think the Phoenix Suns know what they're doing, what a perfect fit from that perspective for me. And I'll just add this, and John references, whoever they pick, whenever they pick, including when we get the second round picks, are going to be so critical. And John already hit this because they cannot fill out that roster. Yep. They don't have any flexibility. And so they can't, nobody wants to be wrong. Phoenix cannot be wrong on any of these picks.
You're looking at veteran minimum deals for the Phoenix Suns to round out their roster, which is why I think they should move back, turn this first into multiple seconds and just, shoot it with a shotgun instead of a sniper rifle and try to figure out how to how to add pieces because they're going to need some for sure. All right, 22 picks in the books. We are chugging along here on Beyond the Arc's second ever mock draft. We're going to continue with pick number 23. It'll be the Milwaukee Bucks and Kyle Boone on the clock coming up after a timeout. You are watching Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. Welcome back to Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. We're also over on YouTube. We chop up all kinds of clips. Check that out. Our page is Beyond the Arc CBS. Please subscribe, hit the like button, leave us a comment. All right, we're into pick 23. I believe that's Kyle. Odd number. I remember these things. Also a weird season for the Milwaukee Bucks. Giannis was injured. First year at Dame Kyle. Didn't quite work. Didn't quite click. Chris Middleton, they have some problems here in terms of roster construction because they're also limited by their cap situation. So it would be great for them and the Bucks and Doc Rivers in his first full year as a head coach there. If they could hit on somebody who might be useful to them, who do you have in mind?
Yeah, I'm going to take who Finkelstein should have taken at 22 for the Suns, and that's Tyler Kolek from Marquette. He played in Pfizer Forum the last couple of years with Marquette. Milwaukee keeps him home. This is a guy who I think is ready to compete at the NBA level right now. Maybe not the most athletic prospect, but certainly I think one of the smarter players in this draft. Led college basketball in assists last season. Someone who I think is a good leader, can play at the guard position and really create at a high level. So feel really confident about his ability to make an impact on a winning team. Milwaukee, I think next season is going to be a winning team. And so I like the idea of keeping him in town and making him a buck.
All right, that brings us to the first of back-to-back picks for the New York Knicks, who are absolutely loaded. They had a great season last year, although they ran into some injuries and that really failed them. And loaded, assuming, Adam, that, they're bringing back OJ, who just opted out, and they're going to negotiate with him. He should be fine. Julius Randle coming back and being healthy. And then Isaiah Hartenstein, they have to figure out what they're going to do with him and whether or not he's sticking around. But the first of the two picks for the Knicks, you're up.
Well, that's exactly why I'm taking Deron Holmes, because if Hartenstein doesn't come back, then all of a sudden you have a gaping hole as your backup big man. And Holmes is someone who can step in. I mean, this is a guy who explored the draft last year. He was an athletic man, non-shooter, went back to Dayton and made huge strides with his shooting. So now he can space the floor a little bit and also be a vertical spacer. I think he's got that motor to play for Tom Thibodeau. This gives them an insurance policy up front.
I like the way you're thinking there, because Bill and Ashley and I have talked about the Hartenstein situation, where I think it's smarter for him to move on. A team like Oklahoma City could offer him a shorter contract for more money, maybe a 2-year deal at $50 million, which is more than the Knicks could offer. And then all of a sudden he's back in the free agent pool at 28 when the salary cap goes up, and he's in line. He's setting himself up for another big deal. So we'll see, though. We'll see whether or not he likes to stick around. It's a good situation for him in New York. That brings us to the second pick, Kyle. For the New York Knicks. Which way are they going with this one?
Yeah, they're going to take Terrence Shannon Jr. from Illinois. And this Knicks front office has showed it really values players who produced at a high level in college. You look at Jalen Brunson, you look at Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo, and Terrence Shannon absolutely checks all of those boxes. He was second last season in the Big Ten in scoring. He was a third-team All-American, averaged 23 points per game. Good size on the wing, can create on offense. Really someone who I think could be kind of a second unit scorer for this Knicks team that is very deep and competing at the top of the East. I think gives them more depth, and someone who I think could fit what the Knicks are doing right now.
All right, we're into the back end of the first round. We're going to go rapid fire on these last few picks here, gang. 26 Washington Wizards. Earlier in the draft, we had Sarr wanting to be a Wizard for reasons surpassing understanding. Adam, who else wants to be a Wizard here?
A.J. Johnson, assuming Isaiah Collier is off the board. The Wizards do not have a long-term prospect to develop at the point guard position. This gives them one. He is a very long-term guy. He's not going to be ready next year, but there are minutes to be had there, and there are not games to win. So they have the luxury of giving him time next year, and he does have a high ceiling.
Brings us to the Minnesota Timberwolves at 27, also super capped out, deep into that second luxury tax apron, Kyle. Absent them unplugging Karl Anthony Towns, this is going to be their team, but they're going to add another pick here. Who do you got?
We're going to take Baylor Shireman from Creighton. This is someone who played 4 seasons in college. Reminds me a little bit of Joe Ingles. Really good scorer, really good playmaker, someone who I think will add, defense and playmaking to a team in Minnesota that is competing right now. So I think Baylor Scheierman, given his experience at the college level, someone who is a cheap contract, who could help contribute on a playoff contending team like Timberwolves, makes a lot of sense there.
Brings us to number 28, the Denver Nuggets. They also have roster construction issues here because of they're also in the second apron here, Adam. If KCP, he's weighing whether or not to opt out of his contract, at which point it's going to be very difficult to replace him. Bill, talk about that. But who do you have them selecting at number 28?
Booth playbook to try and find rotation players late in the first round. You just need to get Mike Malone to be on the same page. But Jamal Shead is someone to me that checks that box. He's one of the toughest, smartest players in all of college basketball last year at Houston. He's undersized, and he's going to have to make shots, but I think the shooting numbers will improve when he's not required to take so many tough shots at the tail end of the shot clock. And again, toughness, defense, intelligence, off the charts.
Yeah, let me just add selflessness and the intensity you're talking about is Michael Malone should be on board. It's such a great fit for what he wants from his players. I love the pick for Denver.
All right, brings us to number 29, the Utah Jazz. Kyle, Danny Ainge back on the clock.
Hillel Ware from Indiana. This is someone who started his career at Oregon, former 5-star recruit, really broke out this past season with the Hoosiers, can stretch the floor, good 3-point shooter, good shot blocker, someone who I think could end up sneaking into the lottery. Falls to number 29 in this draft. I'll happily scoop him up here.
Brings us to the final pick of the first round, number 30 overall, the NBA champion Boston Celtics. The rich don't need to get richer, but they're going to make a selection here, Adam.
It would take Johnny Furphy if he were available, because obviously shooting is very important in Boston these days. And Furphy is a shooter who has improved more in the last 2 years than anyone could have expected. Not sure he's going to be ready to play minutes next year in the Celtics title defense, but he is a long-term prospect with a high upside who really fits that Joe Mazzulla style of play, emphasizing the math of shooting a lot of threes.
Also, the name Johnny Furphy is a fantastic name and feels like it would be a perfect fit for Boston. That just sounds like a guy who would end up in Celtic green. All right, there it is. Our second ever mock draft is in the books. One more break, and then we're going to wrap up the show. This is Beyond the Arc right here on CBS Sports Network. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. We just wrapped up our second ever mock draft. Took 30 names. One of them, Bill, that we did not mention. A lot of interest in this guy, Bronny James. What are you hearing?
Well, every expectation is he's going to be a Los Angeles Laker at 55. I would love some team to go against the grain, draft him, hold him hostage, make it dramatic. I don't think that's going to happen. So we can all just wait for the second night of the draft when Bronny inevitably is selected by LeBron James / the Los Angeles Lakers.
Yeah, biggest surprise for me, biggest takeaway from our 30 picks, I think it was Donovan Clingan falling to number 6. I think that's a realistic possibility. Right now, he actually has the second best odds to go number 1 overall on draft night, but there's a real chance he falls out of the top 5. If that's the case, I think there's going to be a lot of appetite from teams outside of either the top 10 or outside of the top 6 to move up and potentially select Donovan Clingan. There could be some fireworks on draft night. Looking forward to see where Donovan Clingan falls and where he lands on draft night. I think there could be some teams that are interested in moving up to select him.
Yeah, to play off that, I think there's a lot of potential for trades. I think Atlanta and Houston could both trade down. I think San Antonio could trade up. Charlotte could trade down. Memphis certainly wants to trade up along with Chicago and OKC. So hopefully it's an exciting night of transactions.
An exciting night of transactions sounds good to me. I'm looking forward to it. You guys got me excited about this. We've got a ton of draft coverage all this week. We're going to be back on CBS Sports Network at 2 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday. But for now, for our NBA insider, Bill Ryder, for our draft experts, Adam Finkelstein and Kyle Boone, I'm John Gonzalez. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you tomorrow.